Oh, I did it again. There we go. Welcome into, I think that's the first time I've ever done that. Forgot to remove the stream starting soon
We're
banner, but
rolling.
we're off and running. This is the Jock Market Power Hour for this week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. I'm Rick Gaiman. That right there is Joe Idoni. Joe, happy Wednesday evening.
What's good, Rick? We got some exciting stuff to talk about as it relates to jock market in general and exciting stuff for this week. I'm ready to roll. Let's do it.
Let's do it for the next hour or so. We are going to be talking through all things Jock Market in regards to the Arnold Palmer Invitational. If you are new, welcome. We've been learning. There are a lot of new people each and every week. We'll talk more about that in just a second. But what's going to happen here is we're currently in the IPO phase, Joe. That means that you can bid on shares of golfers. And before 9 o'clock, usually a few minutes before 9 o'clock Eastern time, those shares are going to be allocated because IPO is going to close. So that's how we're going to spend our next 45 minutes or so, Joe. And then we'll talk about some in-game strategy as well.
For sure. We'll recap a little bit of last week. Like you said, be ready because that IPO can close at any time within, I think we were informed last week that it's a 90-second time frame. So it can come quickly like we saw last week. It can extend a little bit, but it's a good time to get your bids rolling early. Let's get into it, man.
All right, let's get into it. And, getting into it, I do want to talk about some of the added trading that we saw last week. Last week was a WGC, Joe. We had a great IPO phase. And we're getting word that records are being broken. We had a lot of in-game trades on Jock Market last week, which is a great sign of things to come, if you ask me.
Absolutely, yeah. So our guy Dave, who I'm sure is here, told us that they saw significantly more live trading, which means there's more liquidity, which means there's more people playing, which means there's more opportunities. I took part in some of that myself and definitely noticed that sort of the bids and the asks were coming a little bit closer together and a little bit more realistic in many cases, which presents so many opportunities as it relates from, essentially Thursday afternoon until Sunday afternoon. So this event is live. This event is fluid. And the way that this whole thing works, you can add more shares or get rid of some at any time. It's awesome.
This is the moment. This feels like a big moment when you start to get more in-game trading, when the market gets more liquid, as you were mentioning, Joe. It improves the quality of the market for everyone. It makes the ability to find sellers, to find buyers, and then potentially provide the support to the jock market for new things like we've been yelling about, right? Hey, let's get some shorting in here. Let's get some all this other stuff. Like this feels like we are making progress, which is awesome. I think we're all headed in the right direction. And quite honestly, everyone is to thank for that, right? Just being a part of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm getting more and more people ask me questions about it, more and more people interested as they are able to kind of go through the approval process and make it legal for play in more and more states. And I know Canada's coming soon. It's only going to continue to grow. So we're in kind of all of us together here in the community, and the chat here are all in sort of on the ground floor. We're getting our feet wet. We're going to understand exactly how this works. So when all the fish come in the ocean, we'll be the sharks.
If you have not joined us yet on Jock Market, you can do so and use the promo code POWER20. That's going to get you a $20 deposit bonus, which is probably going to get you a couple shares of the highest priced golfer here in IPO this evening. We'll talk about that in a second. But real quick, Joe, let's look back at last week because the WGC workday, I'm trying to think. I guess we've had a couple of no-cut events, the Zozo, the CJ Cup, the Tour Championship at the end of last year, but a cash market in a no-cut event is something special, and we saw that last week.
Yeah, plenty of opportunities. Obviously, Colin Morikawa paid off huge for those able to get him. I think he was around, it was around $6 a share there, which is a great price. And look, you only have to nail like a couple of these guys. Like last week, I basically missed on everyone but Brooks Koepka. I had 40 shares of Brooks. It paid off all four of the other guys that I almost completely whiffed on. and you end up turning a profit. So if you can catch one of those weeks, really is what we're looking for, to get 3 or 4 guys inside the top 15, inside the top 20. It's go time. It's time to giddy up, like Sal says.
That's right. This time last Wednesday, Colin Morikawa closed at $6 a share. He got the full payout of $25 a share. Brooks Koepka, $7.07, returns you $20 a share. And Viktor Hovland, Joe, he's not going to be this cheap this time around. He closed last week at $7.08, and his final payout was $18 a share. Spoiler alert, I already know he's more expensive than this.
Breaking news. Viktor Hovland's in double digits already, and it's 820. So he's going to be quite expensive, and by all accounts should be, right? I don't know where that's going to end, but he's playing so good. Obviously the quad on number 9, which I think was maybe his last hole of the day, maybe not, but it killed him, right? He would have won the tournament otherwise. The ball striking was phenomenal. He seems just so, and maybe this is just his personality in general, but he seems so comfortable with himself on the golf course, playing in these PGA Tour events. Nothing can rattle him, whether he's playing with Rory, whether he's playing with Bryson, whether he's playing with Brooks. He is his self, and it's great to see. I'm rooting, obviously, for Vic. He's great for the game and continues to play great golf.
He certainly does. And, it is really scary where he's got the game and the mental side of it already at such a young age. It's kind of spooky. And if there's any questions about Jock Market, throw them in the chat. This is a very interactive live chat. So happy to bring up any questions or comments or anything like that. Players you want to talk about, players you maybe don't want us to talk about, throw those in the chat as well. But just to kind of put this into perspective for Viktor Hovland, this is all the data from every single cash market. It's available for free on RickRunGood.com. Look at the last 5 weeks for Viktor Hovland. So of course he wins at Mayakoba, gets you 212% ROI, doubles his money at the Farmers, 75% ROI at the Genesis, and 154% at the Workday. He had a rough tournament of champions, but otherwise he has been absolutely phenomenal here in the cash Jock market.
No doubt about it. Yeah, deservingly so. He's been playing great golf. That said, at the same token, his IPO price this week is already basically $3 higher than any of those there. So you're going to pay a premium if you still feel real good about Hovland this week.
Bay Hill, Arnold Palmer Invitational, absolute staple on the PGA Tour down in your neck of the woods. I guess Orlando's not all that close. How close are you to Orlando, Joe?
2.5 hours. Frequent there quite often. Wife's a big fan of Disney.
There you go. So is Jason Day. So maybe as long as we can keep him, if we can keep him in the tournament this week, I think he'll be just fine. But to me, this is a ball striker's paradise, and we saw this course really bite back last year. It was actually relative to par, the most difficult course we had on tour last season. So there's only one major in there, and the winds did kick up. I don't expect it to be anywhere near the difficulty that Terrell Hatton won this with last year. He's 4 under winning this golf tournament, but you do have to be sharp around here. Nothing is given to you at Bay Hill.
Absolutely. And it plays a lot like, in some respects, most of these Florida golf courses, and you can't overpower these courses. It's a ball strikers. It's an approach shot. It's iron play. That's what wins here. That's why we saw Colin Morikawa win last week. That's why we saw Vic Hovland make such a good run last week. It's not bomb and gouge. Part of the reason why we don't see some of these longer hit, Dustin and even Rory, even though he's teeing up this week, some of these guys don't like to play a whole lot in Florida because there's just water. There's so much trouble off the tee. It's more so find the fairways and then attack pins with your irons. But you got to do it from the fairways. I've seen some tweets this week, and their rough looks gnarly. Now, we've all fallen victim to a picture on Twitter before where the rough looks gnarly and it doesn't end up playing that bad. I think they've grown it up. It always plays typically very firm and fast on the greens, and they're very tough. So, yeah, I expect it to be a difficult course. I expect it to be around 10, 12, 14 under par as a winning score, and it'll be a good test.
I have read the rough around the green specifically as squirrely, which means you can get a good lie, you can get a terrible lie. You are just kind of at the luck of the draw. And Bernie is in the chat, and we welcome him back. And he wants to know if Viktor Hovland is going to break the record for the most expensive golfer in IPO tonight, Joe. Now, if you remember back to, I think it was the Waste Management. I always keep saying the American Express. I'm pretty sure it was Waste Management. Yeah,
it was Waste. Yep.
Thank you, John Rahm. closed at $12.51. That's the most expensive any golfer has been. So to put that into perspective, if Viktor Hovland goes for $12.50 this week, he's going to have to finish 7th or better to pay off that price. Will Viktor Hovland get anywhere close to that number this week?
I don't think so. I'm not willing to quite go that high on Vic Hovland. We were talking just briefly before we went on the air here, but it's kind of I kind of expect some volatility this week, not only because of the golf course and how difficult it plays and how trouble and double bogeys lurk out there for everyone. But it's kind of in a weird spot. It's sandwiched between a new WGC event where they all had to prepare for a new golf course, obviously World Golf Championship stakes on the line there, and then they go to the Players next week. So it's kind of in a unique spot. I don't know that betting on Vic to finish 7th or better is a wise strategy, but he very well could come close to that price, seeing where he is at right now.
And talking about where they need to finish, that's kind of what we call their fair value or their fair value position. And there's a question here in the chat asking about, if we talk about what value golfers that we like. So I kind of take this question in a couple of different ways, Joe. It could be guys further down the board that we think are values, but when it relates to the jock market, this is about how much you're willing to pay for a golfer. And you go through this process every single week for, dare I say, every single player in the field you create a fair value for, and then you kind of take your targets from there. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will set essentially a target price. Basically, in simplified terms, I take what is assumed as the fair value price for their break-even rank, and I knock it down a little bit. Depends on the golfer. Sometimes I'm willing to pay more than what their listed fair value price is, but essentially I want to get in just under that. That's a target price, an entry-level price that I feel is fair and should pay back its money on these guys, and it's proven pretty successful for me. I think I'm 6 of the 8 markets this year since 2021 I've ended up getting paid out on, so it's working out pretty well. I'm going to try to hopefully continue the trend this week.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we are about 30 minutes away from this IPO closing. So we are going to go shortly here to the big board. We're going to see what the current pricing is. We're going to see where the value's at, who needs to be bid up, and all that good stuff. But Austin Blasky has a question here in the chat, and Austin's been a great supporter. And this is a really good one. And he wants to know what we think the biggest update or add should be to the app, assuming as Jock Market continues to grow, more features, more things are being rolled out. Is there anything that comes to mind right away, Joe, for things that you'd like to see come in the future?
I think there's 2. I think we've talked about being able to kind of create a favorites list. It seems relatively simple, but they've got all kind of programmers and they're working on so many other things. But being able to kind of simplify a list down from 125 golfers to really the guys that you want to target, and kind of being able to view them all in the same place during this IPO, as hectic as it gets, would be very beneficial. And then shorting. I mean, shorting is going to be really cool when it's available. We all have guys that we want to fade. It seems almost easier to like when we're trying to say a guy's going to win, we're trying to pick one. Only one player's right out of 100.
Only one's winning, right? Yeah.
You can pick these guys that you want to fade, and you'll have a bigger success rate because there's a lot more guys that miss the cut. And if you can nail a couple big ones, notably Bryson has not played very well lately. So if you feel like it's a good opportunity to short Bryson and he misses a cut, that's something that I feel like can be very fun, exciting, and be very unique as well.
I would love. Okay, so those 2 absolutely come to mind. And just to kind of illustrate how bad Bryson has been in the jock market, he has never returned. Oh, I just clicked off him. He has never returned a profit. How about that? 5 cash markets he has been a part of. He has never returned a profit. That is jarring. So wouldn't you love the ability to short a guy like this, to short a guy like a Jordan Spieth or something like that? And then the only other thing that I could think of, Joe, was, and I don't know how this would work, but the brains over at Jock Market can figure this out better than I can. But I want to invest in a guy this week and hold on to him for like a month and see what happens, right? I want to hold him through the Masters. I don't know how that works. It might not even be legal. I don't even know, but it sounds awesome to me.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That would be so much fun. It would probably have to be its own contest.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, like maybe you can set it at a certain number of players and set it up sort of like a listener league. Like maybe we can have a Power Hour listener league where we have like 100 spots, and then we can kind of have a season long type of thing. Maybe we'll get Dave working on that. That'd be fun to kind of create a little community field. Not that he's got enough on his plate.
I was going to say, I'm sure he has nothing else he needs to be doing right now. Yeah, that would be cool. Or I know some people, as we'll get into the big board here right now, but I know some people kind of do this themselves. They'll invest in a golfer, then they'll take the proceeds and they'll invest again the next time they play. And then if they get it, so just kind of roll it over themselves, which is a fine way to do it as well. Mm-hmm. All right, Joe, it's about that time. It is 8:30 on the East Coast. We are probably about 27-ish minutes, 28 minutes away from this IPO closing. So we've already established that Viktor Hovland is the most expensive golfer at the current moment, and he's $10.18. So what that means is if you're a buyer on Viktor Hovland at $10.18, you need him to finish 11th or better. So if he finishes 11th, he gets $10.50 a share. If he finishes 12th, that would be $10 a share. So already, Joe, we've got Viktor Hovland snapping through the $10 mark, the double-digit mark, and I don't know when it's going to slow down. I think there's going to be buyers up to at least 11. What do you think?
I think so too. Yeah, I think we may hit a little bit of a peak here for a certain amount of time up till close on Vic, and we'll see some of these other guys potentially make up some ground that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think anything over $11 is very much clear of my target price. So I'll probably be off it at that point. But you spoke to it. I mean, the guy's playing so good. He seems just ready to win one of these big-time major events, and this should set up very well for him given the current form.
The thing that's most interesting about someone who is as consistent as Viktor Hovland has been is even if he doesn't pay off the full amount, it's seemingly unlikely he's really going to burn you, right? I mean, look at his finishes. Yeah. The one at the Tournament of Champions was 31st out of what? I think they had 42 in that field, but he's gone second, fifth, second, first, 15th. Like, even if he's not contending, you can't imagine he's going to lose you everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's 5 of the last 6 ones he's played in. He's returned a profit in there. In just the approach numbers, right? The iron play. We talked about how important that is this week. They're off the charts with Vic Hovland. Not only last week, but the last 3 events, he's like, I think almost at 19 strokes gained on approach cumulative over the last 3 events, which is ridiculous. But have we seen many times, particularly with the API, is it comes down to a hot putting week. And that's the guys that we see coming. That's oftentimes the guys we see win on tour. But it seems like this event more than most, we see a guy have a crazy Sunday where they're looping in 35, 40 footers, and that guy ends up holding the trophy. A lot of times not in the final group as well. So could present some opportunity in play if you can get a guy who have a hot Sunday round, maybe a few groups off the final pairing.
Below Viktor Hovland is Rory McIlroy, who at last check is $8.75 a share. Terrell Hatton, your defending champion, $8.03 a share. Then it goes to Patrick Reed, $7.50. Matthew Fitzpatrick at $7.45, and then Will Zalatoris at $7.40. Outside of, I guess, Bryson's not up there. Those are generally like your top 4 or 5 favorites, but there seems to be a bit of resistance to Bryson, who's currently sitting down here at $7.33.
Yeah, I think it has to do with a couple things. Since the Masters, we haven't really seen him play that well, number one. Number two, he's just simply burned a lot of people on here. Anybody who's ever bought a share of Bryson DeChambeau has lost money on that share.
At least in the IPO, but yes, for sure.
Yeah, right. At least in the IPO phase. So I mentioned earlier, I don't think you can bomb and gouge Florida. Now, Bryson, maybe a different story. Like when his driver is going, he should create some fireworks potentially this week on number 6 that we're all going to be tuned into. But I don't know, man. There's a price for Bryson, and I don't know if we've hit that floor. He seems to be pretty good value there, but we'll see how much that sort of ticks up. Sungjae underneath him as well, I have some interest in. Seems a little low right now in comparison to where you look at him kind of popularity-wise on the odds board.
If you made me guess about who's going to be making a move here in the next 20 minutes or so, Sungjae is on that short list. You know, he is not only finished 3rd in each of his 2 trips to Bay Hill, but he's played well in Florida in general. He's been one of the best players in the Florida swing. He's great off the tee. He's going to be popular in all types of fantasy formats this week. So I guarantee Sungjae is going to be flying up this board in the next few minutes here. But right below is Paul Casey. And here's a guy that I probably think, Joe, you would have liked me to keep a little bit quiet on, because he is someone that I said to you before we went hot, if there was ever really a place to roll out Paul Casey, it's here in Valspar. I mean, these are the two spots, Florida courses that require ball striking, and the fact that most people don't realize that he played so well in Europe in the last couple of weeks or month or two. So that's a guy that I think, we'll see what the power of the power hour is to move that price, but I think he's a guy that you can get some value on this week.
Very quiet this week on Paul Casey. I would agree kind of in general. Like you said, some of the, a lot of us use similar stats and to get models and sort of strokes gain data. That stuff, when he kind of laps the field over in Europe, ain't showing up there. So you kind of can sort of sleep a little bit on his current form and some of the ball striking that we've seen from Paul Casey. Like you said, he always plays well in Florida. But speaking of, he's kind of an unpopular guy this week, I think, in many circles. Right underneath him, I got to ask you a take on your guy who's probably the most popular pick this week that I've seen his name everywhere, and it's your boy, Sammy Ceilings. Is it time?
Listen, I'm very bullish on Sam Burns. I'm not even as bullish as everyone was this week, right? Everything I saw, I'm like, oh my God. And then I saw that he's in the top 5 of most outright tickets that were placed this week. I'm like, this guy is catching so much. I will say this. He's an incredible talent. It's why we've spent the last, 10 weeks talking about him. He's so good off the tee. He's a bomber. He's a high spin player. He showed us a lot at Riviera with the touch around the greens. And of course he didn't hold on to it, but listen, it's Riviera. Things get hot and heavy on a Sunday on the PGA Tour. I'm okay with him, faltering a bit, or at least not winning that golf tournament. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a price that's going to be too much for even my stomach, Joe. And I don't know if it's, let's call it 750. 750 would put him at what? Inside the top 20. I'm okay with that. I would probably put him around 850. That's probably what I'd be willing to go up to. That's a top 15 finish or so for Sam Burns. But I have a feeling, just because what you've been saying and what we've seen, Sam Burns is going to catch steam in the next 20 minutes. It just feels that way.
Absolutely. I think everyone's got a nice little outright ticket on him this week, it feels like, but that's different than this, right? Because the outright tickets, you can find a nice price. This is strictly based on the popularity of the users. And most of the users are pretty hip to Sam Burns right now. They're looking at stats. They see that he's number 1 in strokes gained putting on fast Bermuda grass greens. They see that they're running their stat models and they're having him pop in the top 5. It's going to be popular. I think that he's probably, I had a target price on Sam Burns of $7.10. I think he's already cleared that. So I'm going to have to pass this week.
All right. So we are seeing a bit of movement here. Sungjae Im has moved up. Rory McIlroy trying to get closer to that $10 mark. But I think this is worth an opportunity to point out Louis Oosthuizen here for a couple of reasons. He has returned a profit in each of his last three cash markets. But this right here, what I'm circling with my cursor, which most people probably cannot see, is that he is pre-ranked as the 4th projected golfer, Joe, which means when you get a tie for positioning, the tie goes to the better ranked player before the start. And Louis Oosthuizen is 4th. Whether you like the ranking or not, there are only 3 guys that are going to win in a tiebreaker situation with Louis Oosthuizen, which does add value to whatever his price comes out to be.
Absolutely. So he breaks all ties, like you said, on 122 of 125 guys this week. Second, and we touched on this last week a little bit, is where it's very much different than the outright betting market. They don't have to win to return for you. So these guys, Louis and Finau and Xander to some degree, and these guys who kind of have a knack for not closing the door and winning when the pressure's on, they still finish top 6. They still finish top 10 all the time. Louis plays great in Florida. Louis plays great on ball striking courses. I have him ranked 9th overall. So I'll be very interested in Louis if he kind of flirts around there in the teens this week.
One of the more, I think, polarizing golfers this week is probably Jordan Spieth, because you've got a lot of believers, and myself kind of included, that what he's done in the last 3 events is real. And the way he's striking the ball is great, and he's produced 3 consecutive top 15 finishes. But I start to pump the brakes when I think about Bay Hill, and I think about the need to be accurate and the need to be exact off the tee, and that is the opposite of what Jordan Spieth is. So I think he's going to be pretty polarizing, Joe. I don't know if he's going to end up being a steal of the draft, or he's going to be the most overpaid for guy. What are your thoughts on Mr. Spieth here?
So it all, obviously, like anyone else, is going to come down to the price. I think with a broader brush, I'm not real high on Spieth this week. I think many of the points that you made are very valid. I don't think this is a course that sets up to the strengths of his game. Hence the reason when he was one of the top players in the world, he essentially would skip this event because he didn't have to play it. Now he needs all the official world golf ranking points he can get. He needs all the Ryder Cup points he can get. He's going to play every event he possibly can, I think, this year in order to gain a little traction. He does have a little bit of form going, so he wants to keep the gas pedal down, which I can respect. I think that he's going to play well. Look, we know he's going to putt well. We know his short game should suit him well. His approach game has been very good the last couple weeks, but there is a lot of trouble lurking off the tee around Bay Hill, and I assume he's going to find some of it.
I tend to agree with that. Looking a bit further down, we're sub $5 at the moment. We've got a defending champion who's starting to round into form in Mark Leishman at $4.59. We've got Harris English, who since his win at the Tournament of Champions has been pretty bad at golf, down here at $4.57. And then you can get your feels in here for a Ricky Fowler, a Henrik Norlander, maybe a Sebastian Munoz, any of these golfers in the sub $5, maybe $4 to $5 range that are really interested to you, Joe?
I do like Leishman. You mentioned it. Has great course history here. Seems to always play well. Is a previous champion here. He has his spots, right? And it's hard to quantify Leishman because you can look at some of the statistical stuff with him, and he's never going to rate out well. And it seems to all kind of very heavily rely on his finishing position, relies on the putter. Does he putt well? I don't know that I can necessarily quantify him as a good putter or a bad putter, but he just has his spots where he's comfortable. He goes back to every year, seems to putt very well there. And then he has his spots where he's terrible and loses 5-6 strokes putting. I think this is a good spot for him. I think he's a little bit undervalued at the current moment. And then you mentioned Ricky. Interesting. Like I just have a feeling kind of that Ricky plays kind of well this week. Like, oh my God, what a difference a good putting week makes. Yeah. Because he didn't really strike it much better. Actually lost strokes with his irons at Genesis, but he finally gained strokes with the putter, which we had been accustomed to just kind of taking for granted that Ricky was always going to putt well. He was lost there for a minute. He had no idea what he was doing. He was walking after putts 2 foot off the face of the putter, but he's back, gained some strokes putting. I feel like he really wants it badly, and he usually plays well in Florida. Obviously has the win at the Sawgrass, has a win at the Honda. This is kind of the third member of the Bermuda's Triangle down here in Florida, so we'll see. I expect him to play pretty well.
He's running out of starts to get into the Masters. Nick Faldo's taking shots on him on Twitter. Things are rough for Ricky right now. He's got to set it straight. He's got to go out and do something here. We're about 15 minutes or so away from this IPO phase closing, so you're going to want to get your bids in right now. There is a question in the chat from Paul who says, how much of each golfer is there? And the answer to that, and Joe's probably better at explaining this, is, we don't know. Right. It's dynamic. It's based on supply and demand. It is at least not a public information of how many shares of each golfer there are. Correct, Joe?
Nope. If it was public information, then there would obviously be a competitive advantage to it. Nobody really knows. My best assumption is that it's kind of a sliding scale, and there are more shares of the guys at the very top than there are the guys that you see down there at $1, just to kind of protect some of their exposure. I mean, if I had to put a guess on it, a couple hundred shares, at least for those guys at the top, would be my guess. So there's plenty of room there to bid. And obviously that keeps changing. Once you get outbid, your shares go back into the pool for the guy who had just outbid you. So it's constantly moving around, and people can fluctuate between moving guys and moving shares.
Yeah, this is certainly a time where those bids are coming in. You're going to be outbid quite often. We're seeing Rory McIlroy on the verge of snapping into the $10 price point here, so that's good to see. Bryson making a move up the board, Sung Jae as well. Before I do want to get to the second page here because there is a lot of value to be had. It's not a huge field. You mentioned it. I think we're at 125 now at this point, so a larger percentage is going to be making the cut than normal weeks. So when I flip to the second page and I start to get into the $3 range, I see guys like Cam Percy, who probably no one knows had a top 10 last week because it was in Puerto Rico and it wasn't at the WGC. People might forget about that. Some of these guys that didn't play in the World Golf Championships but are playing well, I think are good targets for this week. Is there anybody here in this kind of $3-ish range, Joe, that maybe moves the needle for you?
Yeah, there's a couple. I have some interest in JT Poston down there. He has had actually stacked a couple of good starts on top of each other. Let me see if I can pull it up here. But obviously a great putter. I very much trust him, particularly on Bermuda grass. 2 top 20s in his last 3 starts. They have him listed fair value at like $3.40. I would make a target price on him around $4, so a little bit higher on JT Poston. Kind of have some interest, like I always do. Someone made a joke earlier, but I always have some interest in Doc Redman just because he's such a good ball striker, and this tends to feel like a good spot for him. Wyndham Clark there as well has been playing some pretty good golf, always plays pretty well down here in Florida. There's a lot of guys in here, and as we've seen in previous weeks, you could make some big time ROIs in this $2-3 range. That's where we see the massive 500, 600, 700% jumps on some of these guys if they have a good week.
You certainly can. We're about getting to that point on Doc where I'm a buyer again. He has had such a terrible start to the 2021 season, but this is too low, especially for a guy who I think it can click for him here at some point. I've got another page here for you, the third page. But before we jump into that, Dave did jump into the chat just to confirm that there are the same number of shares for every single golfer, and those shares are being issued equally in every player as more funds come in during IPO, which makes a lot of sense. And that is why we let them be the brains of all of this. And we just come on the show and we just speculate wildly, Joe, about what's possibly going on out there.
We're just players, man. We're not the brains behind the operation. We're just dumping our accounts into this thing every week, hoping to return a few bucks.
Awesome. The third page here. So now we're really getting into what we would deem as these penny stocks. And I see names like Keith Mitchell, who, I kind of go off what people ask me about. People ask about Keith Mitchell because he's won in Honda. And it's like, oh, it's a Florida swing event. How about Keith Mitchell? Nah, probably not for me. Look at some of these guys who, again, I think you got to be smart down here. Guys who played in Puerto Rico last week, guys who might reside on the European tour more often, like an Eric Van Rooyen, like a Matthias Schmid, who is a top-ranked amateur in the world. I mean, these are pure penny stocks, and I think they should be treated as such. Are there any penny stocks here, Joe, that you think are worth investing in?
So a couple of them, and they kind of have different reasons. Christoph Ventura lives down here by me. I know has played really well sort of in this region, is a Bermuda grass putter, has not been in great form, but I feel like he's on the verge of putting. I know that he plays a lot with Brooks up there at Florida Club. So he can play good golf. The other one that I'm sort of looking at is KH Lee. So KH Lee had like some famous like 700% returns a couple of weeks ago, but it seems to me like anytime there's a ton of water in play at a course, whether it be Waste Management, whether it be the American Express, when there's water off the tee, and he played really well at the Honda Classic. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago where he had a top 5 finish. These courses that are surrounded by hazards, he seems to just pop at, and I think could go pretty well here. And the last guy I'll mention really quickly here is Charles Howell. Talk about just a pure ball striker that I think is really forgotten about down in this range. Another guy, the form's terrible, but if the form was good, he wouldn't be down here. Has some good finishes at the Arnold Palmer Invitation in his career. I think 225s in the last top 3. I think 225s in the last 3 years. So good course history for Charles Howell. You're just looking to grasp at a little bit of a straws here down with these guys, but I'm just trying to isolate a few that kind of pique my interest a little bit.
I like that. And to add a little bit of context to KH Lee, he feels to me as the pure kind of feast or famine golfer. You mentioned it, the 745% ROI at Waste Management. He had another week at Sony where he went 224%, 93% at the American Express. Now he's also had a couple of weeks where he's lost half of your investment, but that's kind of the boom or bust aspect of Mr. KH Lee. So Joe, we're going to cut you loose here. So if you're new, here's what we normally do. So in a couple of minutes, I'm just going to let Joe go have a little bit of fun because we are about 7-8 minutes away from this IPO closing, and we're going to give him about 5 minutes to really go through, make his bid, so we can talk about the shares that he got, the players that he got, and all that fun stuff. But before I do that, Joe, give us a general idea, maybe how many golfers, maybe even a couple of names of golfers that you might be trying to get in the next, let's call it 8 minutes.
Sure. So I usually try to end up with around 5 or 6 guys. I try to get a little bit from each range. The top tier, I'm interested in Sung Jae. I'm interested in Tyrrell Hatton. I'm interested in, I haven't had a chance to really dive too much into the pricing yet, but I'm interested in Louis that we've spoken about. And then Frankie Molinari, who we didn't speak about. He's been really playing some good golf and obviously coming back to a spot where he won and gained a couple strokes putting. I'm looking for that guy. And I mentioned, when Molinari won here, when Rory won here 2 of the last 3 years, they had the best putting performance of their entire career. So I'm looking for a guy that's coming in with some comfort with the putter and can just get red hot and I think storm this place. Lower down, I have some interest in Max Homa. He rated out really well, isn't too high priced right now. Always like me some Lanto. Matt Neesmith is another guy. So there's a lot of guys kind of on my short list right now, but once I can kind of dive into the pricing, I'll try to narrow it down to 5 or 6.
The top of the board is shaping up. Viktor Hovland has gotten to $11 per share. Again, that is essentially asking him to finish 10th or better. And Rory McIlroy is nipping at his heels. Tyrrell Hatton, Bryson DeChambeau, and Patrick Reed rounding out the top 5. And here's the steam. Here's the Sung Jae steam, Joe. He's coming. He's $8.06. I think we're going to see that continue to climb. But what do you think about the way that this board is shaping up as we are in what is seriously probably the final moments of this IPO phase?
Yeah, in comparison to last week, to be honest, the prices seem a little high. I don't know if there's just been a lot of early bids, but a lot of these guys are sort of clear of my targets, particularly at the top here. So I may look to attack a little bit more of the mid tier this week in comparison to last.
And we found out last week that there is essentially a 90-second window in which this IPO phase can close, and it closes at random. And I think last week, a lot of people were left holding their phone like, I maybe didn't get my bids in as much as I would like. So I think the strategy, what we're already seeing this week, Joe, is people are in there making their bids, not going to be put in the same position as they were last week, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, people are getting them in nice and early, driving them prices up, hoping to not get caught holding the phone, like you said.
All right. Well, Joe, we're not going to let you get caught holding the phone. We're going to let you go at it here. I think we're about probably 5 or 6 minutes away. So Joe's going to go do his thing, and he's going to let us know when the IPO phase closes. And I know this is usually when the comments gets real quiet. Everybody's got their phone out, but I'm going to try to steer you through the final few minutes of this Jock market. And it is still Viktor Hovland leading the way at $11. Rory McIlroy creeping up $10.01. He's moved a cent since the last time I looked at him. So to put that into perspective for the former champ, he needs to finish inside the top 11 to make you money. If he finishes 12th or worse, you are going to lose a bit on each one of those shares. Tyrrell Hatton, our defending champion, $9.30 at the current moment. Now, he has failed to convert on profit in each of his last 3 events, but this does not show anything he's done on the European Tour where he has played awesome. Bryson DeChambeau is not going to go down without a fight. Currently $8.71. So for Bryson, what you're asking him to do is finish 15th or better. If you think Bryson's going to finish 15th or better, you're a buyer at $8.50 or more, maybe more. We're seeing steam from Sung Jae. He continues to move. I think when we opened the show, he was at $6. That was about 30 minutes or so ago. He's now up to $8.33. He is your 5th pre-ranked golfer, meaning he's going to break ties for everybody except Viktor Hovland, Bryson DeChambeau, Paul Casey, and Louis Oosthuizen. Sungjae is going to break a tie for everyone else. We are seeing Corey Connors. I'm going a little bit further down the board here. Corey Connors picking up steam. That's the ball striker mentality for this week. Harris English picking up steam. He's up to $6 this week. We're seeing Sam Burns climb, and I think we're going to continue to see that. So let me go ahead and give you another quick refresh here, because this IPO can probably close anywhere in the next, 3 minutes or so, is I think what we're looking at here. We had a lot of people left holding the phone last week without getting their bids in. I don't think that's going to happen this time around. And we're seeing Rory start to fill the gap here. So Rory's now $10.19. He's trying to make a run at Viktor Hovland. Remember, our most expensive golfer we've ever had in the IPO was Waste Management. It was John Rahm. He closed at $12.51. We've been close recently. We have not been able to smash through that number. Sungjae, $8.50, actually higher than Patrick Reed. Betting markets would disagree with this. The outright market would disagree with this, but clearly the sentiment on Sungjae at the moment is better than that of Patrick Reed. A little bit further down the board, we are getting some steam on some younger golfers. Will Zalatoris, the all-around stud, the next big thing, $8 flat at the moment, which is essentially asking him to finish 18th or better. He's done that quite a bit in his young career. Will Zalatoris, $8 on the number. Cameron Davis, $7.80. He is we love him here on the Jock Market Power Hour. He's going to be a great ball striker. He's got all the raw talent in the world. He is currently at $7.80, and he's pre-ranked at number 10. Trying to see if there's a little bit of steam here. Here's Jordan Spieth. Here's that polarizing Jordan Spieth we were talking about, $5.88. He doesn't have a great pre-rank. He breaks very little ties with anybody ahead of him. Not seeing much movement here in the last couple of minutes. Jordan Spieth still hanging down here below Max Homa, Jason Kokrak, Corey Connors, Harris English, below all of those guys. We're moments away from the Jock Market closing. We're moments away from IPO closing here. Joe looks like things are going well. I try to read Joe's face while he's doing this. He doesn't seem to be panicking. Sometimes he's panicking. He seems to be in an okay mental space right now.
I'm in full control.
All right, he's in full control. We're going to find out what that actually means in just a minute or two, but this IPO phase can now close at any time. So we are in it right now. I expect it to close shortly, and I'll get you a quick update here on the pricing. We have not seen a movement from Viktor Hovland. $11.
Okay, we're closed. We are closed. Officially closed.
We are done. So we'll throw up the IPO. We'll do this.
Take a deep breath.
Relax. Take a sip of water. Take a deep breath. Tell us who you got in the chat. We're going to let our dashboard reload here. We're going to let Joe chat through the last couple of minutes and what shares he did end up getting.
So a couple of ones, I don't know for sure which ones I got until they transfer over to my holdings, but I know that I definitely got, it appears, outbid at the last minute on Francesco Molinari, who went for, it looks like $7 and I think 10 cents per share. I don't know what he closed at, but there was a lot of those guys at the top that I really wanted. I got outbid on Louis as well. Just were a little bit higher than I wanted. And I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, and I mentioned this to Chad on the show I do, Preferred Lines on Monday nights. I feel like there's going to be some volatility this week. I just feel like a lot of these guys in the mid-tier are going to approach this event as let me go get some points, right? There's the red light. There it is.
Sorry, I forgot about it.
We're shut down. As you see these move over to your holdings, just remember you will see it'll basically give you an immediate plus minus in terms of your pricing. Don't take that too much into account just yet. That will change throughout the event. And as soon as they're in your holdings, you can list them for sale. You can buy more from people. That's when this thing sort of really kicks off and started, and that's what we saw a lot of the action last week.
Viktor Hovland closing at $11 even, so he did not move off of that for the final couple of minutes or so, but still very easily the most expensive Viktor Hovland has ever been in a Jock market. Rory McIlroy, $10.25, and the glaring thing right off the bat, Joe, is Rory McIlroy. Odds makers listed him as the favorite this week. He is the second most expensive golfer. Viktor Hovland gets the nod. Are you surprised to see any name that is not Rory McIlroy at the top of this board?
I would say that just Hovland's had so much steam and he's playing so well in this isn't necessarily like setting a precedent. We've seen this a couple of times, particularly the last two events that world number one and seemingly the man on the throne of the pro golf world right now, Dustin Johnson, hasn't closed with the highest IPO. So we've seen this happen before. I'm not necessarily surprised given the form that Hovland's in. But yeah, I mean, Rory is the prohibitive, I think, favorite in terms of win equity this week.
I also think that this illustrates the differences between an outright ticket and the jock market, where seemingly Viktor Hovland's floor is incredibly high. And I think that is getting built into some of the pricing for him. People are feeling comfortable putting their hard-earned dollars behind Viktor Hovland because in theory, he's not going to burn them. So this really does illustrate the differences between the two formats.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Rory has a lot more, a higher ceiling when he's playing well. And that's maybe debatable even right now, but definitely the floor is lower. Like the chances of missing a cut this week, I think are higher with Rory than they would be with Hovland.
Bryson DeChambeau, $9.88. Terrell Hatton, $9.35. Patrick Reed and Sung J M both at $9.25. That rounds out the golfers above the $9 mark. Any surprises here? Any names missing or anyone that maybe we think shouldn't be here?
That's a hefty price to pay on Bryson, I'll tell you.
He's a hefty guy.
He's basically got to finish like what is it, 15th or better there to break even. Maybe we've hit the floor with Bryson, and maybe I'm going to look silly by saying this, that it's, back in November, he was the favorite basically heading into the Masters. So the guy's got all the talent level in the world, but we've seen the sort of ebbs and flows of his career and how it's kind of been a roller coaster of extreme highs. And then he goes through these lows where he's seemingly searching. He's kind of stuck in that rut right now. So we'll see if he can dig his way out.
12th or better is what Bryson would have to finish to pay off that IPO price. Looking a little bit further down the board, the two that stand out to me, one, Paul Casey at $7.80, just because I think this is a really good spot for Paul Casey. That's part of it, but also he's the third ranked golfer. So he breaks all the ties except for Viktor Hovland and Bryson DeChambeau, which is incredibly valuable. And then also Louis Oosthuizen at $8. I didn't know where he was going to go because the pre-rank of fourth I thought was very generous for Louis. And I didn't know if that was going to drive any of his pricing up. And I want to get your thoughts on those two.
Yeah. So Louis, I had a bid on, I think it's 775. And then I got outbid sort of in the final minutes there on Louis. I really think that he sets up well for this type of a platform. We'll see if that pays off. He's been known to have some volatility to him too, and just miss cuts out of nowhere in some places. Will Zalatoris kind of was a little bit under the radar this week. I think you take us back in the time machine a couple of weeks ago and drop this same field, and he would have been listed as one of those favorites up there at the top. He had so much steam a month ago, and it's not like he's playing poorly. Maybe just some of that new shine has worn off in people's minds. But I really where I went is I kind of attacked sort of that second range down, which I talked about on there, and got the guys sort of in the mid-teens. And I'm hoping one of them can kind of make a move.
Okay, so let's take a look at who you ended up here with, Joe. So talk us through who you got. You can tell us how many shares you got, but how many golfers are in your portfolio is also what I'm looking for here. Okay.
So I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys this week,
which seems to be, if I remember correctly, I think the last couple of weeks you probably had 5 or 6 on the larger side of the portfolio for you.
Yes. So it's a little more. So the last couple of weeks, like 2 weeks ago, I had a ton of shares of John Rahm at a very high price. Last week, I had a ton of shares of Justin Thomas at a very high price. So when I wasn't paying double digit per share this week, I was able to kind of diversify a little bit with some of these guys in the middle range. So here's who I got. Both basically. So my highest price guy that I paid was Billy Horschel. $7.20 came in just right under the target price that I was looking. Everyone else had kind of cleared their mark. Played really well last week. I had some nice tickets on him last week with a top 10 and outright that gave me a little bit of a sweat there for a while. So he just seems in great spirits. He's in a great spot with his game. He spoke so much about how his comfort level back on these Florida Bermuda grass greens. Good history here as well. So I took Horschel, and then right below him at $6.50, I think there's some value on Max Homa this week. He's playing so well, very overlooked. I think a lot of people are just expecting the gas tank is maybe on empty. I'll take that gamble at that price and hope there's a little left in the tank because he's just striping it so well right now.
I thought I read or somebody told me that he showed up to Bay Hill like today or something like that, took a couple of days off, and someone was saying that's a bad thing. And I was like, no, I think that's a good thing. Like, just do a small little baby reset. Winning as an emotional of a victory as he did at Riviera and having to go immediately to the WGC that he wasn't expecting to play. Just take a day off, take a breather, have a little reset. I think Homa is very interesting this week. I like that, Joe.
Yeah, so that worries me a little bit naturally.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but I'm like pretty sure that's what I don't know if it's today or he got there on Tuesday.
When you're showing up, in such great form, yeah, take a couple of days off, reset sort of the mind a little bit more than anything. And when you come back 2 later, it's 2 days like you completely lost your swing thoughts and your rhythm and things like that. So I think he'll be fine. Next, this is where things get a little bit interesting, and I'm probably going to catch some heat.
Are we going off the rails here?
$4 range. Man.
You have to say it.
I got Ricky and Justin Rose.
Wow. Okay. The Rose thing, I don't think is that bad because people are not going to remember that he finished second in Saudi Arabia like 3 weeks ago or whatever that was. So I'm actually kind of cool with the Rose one. The Fowler, and I think you were kind of getting to this earlier, that's a hunch at this point, right?
It's totally a hunch. I don't know, man. It's a hunch. That's all I'll say. I don't really have any good stats to sort of back it up, but it's totally a hunch. I felt like it was a good price for him. It was under where I had him ranked, and I just pressed buy. Right below them, and he's actually not below them because I paid a little over $6 a share, was Mark Leishman. I really like Mark this week. I'm thinking about using him as my one and done pick actually and going a little contrarian there and staying away from the top of the board because I don't know that there's too many other spots left on the schedule where I'd use Leishman. Great course history. Just get a hot putter, Mark. And then below them, the 2 sort of low price guys that I got. One was KH Lee, who I spoke about, ended up at $2.54. And the other was Poston, who I also spoke about. I think JT Poston has really big upside. And I think that he's one of these younger players that is oftentimes maybe not quite the second tier, but that third tier of guys. But I think that he's really close to making a leap to being one of these guys that can win a tournament every 2 years and sort of finish consistently, make good finishes and make his top 20s and become a pro.
I like this. This is a pretty diverse set of golfers. I think that there is a lot of upside on this list. And we have to remind people, IPO's over, but live trading starts right now. Like we're in it, right? I mean, if you missed out on somebody in the IPO phase, go make an offer. Joe, like Joe might go to sleep tonight, feeling a little worried about Ricky Fowler, might want to move off of him. You might be able to pry some of those shares away from Joe, but it starts right now, my friend.
Listen, if you like Ricky, send me an offer. All right. There's a price tag on every one of these guys that I'll sell him for. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And at the same token, a lot of those guys, the guys higher up that I maybe missed out on, if they struggle a little bit, and we've seen the volatility of this course, right? We know there's double bogeys out there. We know that the winning score is not going to be 25 under par, where if you start 2 over 3 or front 9, you're totally dead because the field's already 7, 8 under par. It's not one of those weeks. Maintain around level par, maybe the opening day, and you're right in it. Get yourself to the weekend. And we've seen so many times these ridiculous runs on Sunday where these guys come from behind and start holing putts and hoisting trophies, man.
Yeah, that's right. And we've seen kind of the opposite, right? I mean, we've seen 2 and 3 shot leads on Sunday disappear in a moment's notice. It kind of goes both ways. And what we're seeing, and I actually think this is a testament to how deep the tour is, Joe, that almost seemingly anybody can shoot a 64 on a Saturday or Sunday. It's crazy how deep and how good these guys are, which makes the jock market even more appealing because you could be holding a guy, making a move from T42 to T12 is a big move in the jock market, and you might not notice it actually on the PGA Tour leaderboard.
There's no doubt about it. That's a huge move in the jock market. In this course, like you said, holding a lead. I don't remember necessarily what Hatton's lead was going into Sunday, but what I do remember is if you're up there, this is a course that can frustrate the hell out of you. And we saw that with Hatton last year. He ended up pulling through for the win, but it can very quickly sort of get in your head with some of these very long approach shots over water, where all of a sudden you're 200 yards out and you're hitting your fourth shot into a par four. So that can happen. That's out there. And there's also birdies to be made and reward players who are aggressive and play really good on the weekend. So there's going to be a lot of shifting up and down the board this week. Should be a very fun week, particularly for jock market.
It has been well documented that you have your fair values for IPO. Are you doing anything similar during the event? At what point would you, or is it all the eyeball test where if Rory struggles out of the gate and you see an ask out there, at what point is there data? Is it the eye test? Is it a little bit of both?
I think for me, it's more so the eye test. I mean, I will typically take a peek at some of the sites like yours and Fantasy National that will give you sort of these in-play stats, as well as just looking at the PGA Tour app. So you can kind of look right there on the app and you click a guy and you can dig a little deeper into his round and see where was he successful and where wasn't he? Is he striking the ball well? Was it all putting? Did he have one triple bogey on a water hole but play really solid the rest of the day? So you can dig a little bit into these things a little bit deeper. But for myself personally, mostly it's going to be an eyeball test and just seeing. I try to read a little bit more into a player than just the stats and see if it feels like they can pop.
And then what also we were talking about, which is kind of the other interesting thing about this, is Players Championships next week. So
Yeah.
you almost wonder how this affects guys where they're going to all be trying to find something on Saturday or Sunday to carry over into next week, even if they are not in this tournament, which I know is very difficult to quantify, but we have seen freewheelers on the weekends who have nothing to lose, who are trying to find something, be really dangerous. And I think we're going to see that this week. They're all looking for that little spark to go to the Players and go to Sawgrass.
Absolutely. And you said it's easier to sort of freewheel it when you're kind of coming from the middle of the pack, right? When you're inside the top 10, sometimes you can get a little bit more conservative. You can put up a yellow light. You can, raise the caution flag. And that's where you can kind of get in trouble, particularly around type of golf courses. So ball strikers paradise, all of Florida is. We'll see kind of how things play out, but definitely you have the ability to be more aggressive and freewheeling and go birdie hunting kind of from the middle of the pack on the weekend.
I love it. It's going to be an absolute blast. Joe, another power hour in the books. If you have not signed up for Jock Market as of yet, you're crazy, but you have time. Go and use the promo code POWER20 to get you a $20 deposit bonus. And I'm excited to see, we were talking about the newfound liquidity, the growing liquidity in these markets that we saw, especially last week, how that's going to carry over into this week with people making these live trades, because that's really what is going to take this experience for everybody to the next level.
Absolutely. And I've heard nothing but great things from anyone who's signed up using the promo code or not using the promo code, but just getting more people involved in this. Realizing how unique and how cool this sort of setup is, it's a very easy sell for guys like us because it's so much fun for the users. It's a very easy to sort of look at platform and easy to understand once you kind of get your feet wet in it. And I'm looking forward to this week and next week. I think we're going to blow it up huge for the Players Championship. So excited for that. We're on a great run here. This is golf season, all the way leading up to the Masters. The sole focus of pretty much the entire sports world should be on this sport. And we've got great stuff ahead of us.
There you go. I love it. I'm stoked. We are on a great stretch of golf, as Joe mentioned, and you can follow Joe on Twitter at TourPicks. You can follow me at RickRunGood. Thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciated. We will see you next Wednesday night for the Players. Good luck this week. See ya.
Thanks, gang.